Welcome to the DGD podcast. As always, Robert Reynolds, the NCDGD himself. Today we're talking Kentucky football, folks. We're gonna do a deep dive there, get a grasp of the Wildcats up there in Lexington. Listen, none other than my good old friend Vinny Hardy over here. Welcome back to the show, my man.
Man, Robert, good to be back. Appreciate you having me on. Congrats and hats off because y'all got that chip last year, and I know y'all basking in the glow. But about to start this other season, and it's that time again finally.
Yeah, as most Georgia fans are going to probably say, repeat season, right? Try to repeat, Um, listen, I think there's a lot of football to be played, so I'm not focused on a repeat just yet. I want to focus on handling regular season. But listen, before we get started, uh, just remember that the show is brought to you by our friends over at Alumni Hall, right? 10 minutes away from Athens. Listen, Nike, Columbia, Cutter and Buck. Listen, polos, shirts, men's, women's, children's, you name it, they've got it. Accessories, all that. Tailgating stuff, they got it. Go check them out. Alumni Hall in store in Athens, or you can check them out online. That's www.alumnihall.com. Check them out. Let them know the DGD sent you. I promise you, you'll love it. Listen, this shirt right here, folks, that's a damn comfortable shirt. I'm telling you right now, it's comfortable and it came from Alumni Hall. So just giving y'all a shout out there. Listen, great clothing, man. It's an awesome place to work with and awesome place to get your stuff from. So check them out. With that being said, with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into this Kentucky situation. I think it's interesting to me because before we even start into currently, right? You take a look at Mark Stoops. And to me, I'm going to go back a little bit because Kentucky had an excellent season last year. Really good season last year. But it's been a culmination of progress and growth for Stoops. And this is something that you don't really see a lot of in college football nowadays. Patience, right? Patience. I have to give credit to Kentucky's AD and everybody for keeping it and being patient to allow Stoops to do what he needs to do. Because now you take a look at what used to be before Stoops, it was terrible. Like there was some okay seasons, but it was terrible. Now you're sitting there, you're looking at Kentucky as a basketball school, right? In the past, and now you're actually looking at them as an everything school, right? And definitely want to get your opinion on that in just a minute. Um, because Stoops has been vocal about that, and I think he has a right to do so. But we'll talk a little bit about that more in just a minute. You know, but what are your thoughts on this? He's been here for going on 10 seasons now, if I'm not mistaken. Um, and I think like I said, you've seen a lot of growth from where Kentucky was to where they are now. What are your overall takeaways for what Stoops has done and the whole and high level scope of things?
It's unbelievable. Like you said, there's been a lot of lean years. You like the people like to call it that before he got there. A little bit of a flash under Rich Brooks. They won 7 games, 8 counting the bowl game a couple times, but nothing sustained. Um, we've seen some bad seasons. I mean, 2-10. The Joker Phillips era was not good. We loved him. He was from Kentucky, played for Kentucky, but it didn't work out. Guy Morris is probably most notably known for the LSU loss at the end of the game. So just a lot of heartbreaking losses, a lot of creative ways to lose games. So that's happened a lot. So to see what Stoops did, come in, the cupboard is bare, 2-10 his first year, and like you said, patience. Then you win 5 a couple years in a row. Then you win 7 a couple years in a row. You just kind of put those building blocks in place, and now we've got 2 10-win seasons in the past 4 years. Some of the recruiting classes are really good. The year before, at a level to where we've never seen it before, where you're beating out a Michigan State, beating out big name schools. Used to be Kentucky guys. Oh, he beat out Central Michigan and Eastern Kentucky. That's who you were beating out to get recruits. And now you see them beating out SEC schools. You see guys from SEC powers, LSU, Boss Man Fat, Derek Rosenthal, those guys transferred from LSU to Kentucky. Jaquez Jones, Keaton Smith from Ole Miss, Manning from Auburn. These guys are leaving those places to come to a place like Kentucky. In basketball, we're used to it. We don't even blink. Football, I'm still kind of just wrapping my head around it. I'm like, wow, this is
It's one of those things where you're not used to it, and you're like, I don't know what to do with my hands right now.
exactly. Like, you're used to it. You're used to it, but me in football, I'm like, wow, this is what Robert gets to go through every year. This is what Alabama and Georgia do.
Well, there's still, I mean, obviously it's just different situations, different problems, but to that degree, like I said, it's been impressive to see what Stoops has done over 10 seasons, right? Like, you know how this goes. And Calipari said it himself, but I think he's wrong. Kentucky is no longer just a basketball school. I'm just being honest with that, right? Like, I know by now y'all probably, if y'all haven't, I'm surprised, but basically Calipari taking a shot, trying to get a new practice gym, saying that that Kentucky's a basketball school and this and that. And listen, 10 years ago, you're probably 100% right. Maybe even as close as 5. But at the same time, Stoops' rebuttal to that, talking about, last I checked, we played in the SEC. That was a huge testament to, hey, listen, he's actually competitive in the SEC right now. Like right now, he's competitive, right? So, and listen, in the years past, even when things were down, right, there was always that one year. I forgot who it was, man. Y'all had it. Oh my God, it was Allen, the linebacker.
Yeah, Josh Allen.
Yes, that God Almighty, man, that team was wild, right? But I think and from a Georgia perspective, this is important because it's not a one-off season like what I thought with Josh Allen. Now you have to really look at Kentucky and see if it's going to be sustainable now, right? Like, is it sustainable? Can they sustain this? Because getting up to that point is one thing. Sustaining it is completely different. So the key now, if I'm outside of Kentucky program, can Kentucky sustain where they are and get better from there? Would that be safe to assume, or what are your thoughts on that?
It looks like that's the case when you talk about just building gradually. That 2018 season when they went 9-3 and 110 with Josh Allen, Benny Snell, and those guys. If you remember back that year when your Georgia Bulldogs came to town, that was for first place in the East. And so we're like, whoa.
Yeah.
And, Georgia handled business, 34-17. Y'all kind of put it, controlled the game throughout. And, it was clear they're still not on Georgia's level. But Georgia's the only team that Stoops has not beaten. He's beaten Florida. He won in the Swamp. He ended that streak. He's beaten Tennessee. He's passed South Carolina, passed Missouri, continually trying
and
to
Louisville too.
Louisville
as well.
Yeah. And so now finished second to Georgia last year, after, another 10-win season. Everybody's got their eye on you guys, of course, but Kentucky is second. You should have beat Tennessee last year, but look, you look down the standings, we're looking down at Tennessee, looking down at Vanderbilt, South Carolina, Missouri. So the pieces are in place. The depth is better than it has ever been because it hasn't been a huge drop-off. The COVID season was a little bit janky. They won 4 games, but outside of that, it's been kind of continually building, even when there's been injuries. The year when Lynn Bowden was the quarterback, because all the other quarterbacks got hurt, they still end up going 7-5. When any other year you're 3-9 with all the injuries that hit. So the depth is there, recruiting's there, the mindset and the culture. You hear it all the time. The culture has really changed dramatically since he's been there.
My thought is overall, right? I feel like Kentucky's fans, from a football perspective, right? I feel like they're in a good spot overall, but I still wonder, right? Obviously, what is the next step for Kentucky, right? You finished second in the East. My thought would be sustaining it would be ideal, right? But obviously, I understand another idea of, hey, now that we hit second, let's go for first, right? I'm under the sustainability model, just from my perspective. I feel like if you can sustain there and hold up top and hold off teams like Tennessee and Florida consistently, then you can build to try to take the top, right? Overall, what are your thoughts from the Kentucky perspective on what's the expectations now that last year you're coming off of a second place in the SEC East finish? What's the expectations now?
Expectations do change, and they change quickly. I mean, 10 years ago, we were just hoping for 6 games and let's go to a bowl game. If you and there was a couple of those years when it went 5-7, you go into the Louisville game 5-6 and you lose and you're not able to get there. So the expectations have changed. I'm not to the point where if they go 9-3 this year, I'm gonna be disappointed because I remember the 5-7s and 2-10 seasons. Chris Doering picked them to go 11-1 on the SEC Network the other day. There's some fans that might be disappointed if they don't. The schedule is manageable. They have a good shot in every single game this year, but I'm not to the point where if they don't win 11, I'm pissed. I'm just not gonna do that. If they win 9 again, there's your sustainability. If they, Stoops himself said, people saying we might go 10-2. He said, I'm not looking to give up anything. So he's got that 12-0 mindset. He's looking to win every game on the schedule. And of course that'd be great. But if it's another 9-3, I'm not gonna be like, oh my God, I'm not gonna be. You won't find me being tired of that because I remember where we were a few years ago.
You gotta plow a 2 to appreciate a 10. Is all I'm gonna say, right? You gotta take those, right? Sometimes, listen, if first world problems could be one thing, but understanding that, right? Like understanding the bottoms and understanding where you are now, I think that makes sense to me, right? I definitely think so. But with that being said, you brought up Doring, right? When he said 11-1, I was shocked, and I think he kind of blew Twitter up for a minute, to be honest, because there were so many people like, "Are you serious? Like that sounds dumb." I'm on board with that a little bit, but not as far off. Like, let's be honest, I'm with you on this. 9-win seasons makes complete sense to me. It just does, and we'll talk about that right later on in the show when we break down our Kentucky schedule and whatnot, right? But for now, 9-win season. To me, from an outsider's perspective, I'm not going to tell Kentucky fans how to feel. But a 9-win season for Kentucky and trying to sustain it's a lot more pleasant than one might really think. Is all I'm going to say with that, and then we can go from there. Excuse me. But with that being said, all right, we got to do a quick brigade roll call here. See Ruse, DJ, Joel. Morning from the brigade, from the Juan Fan Club financial office in Utah. So we've got people from Utah. We've got we got it going. But with that being said, we're gonna take a quick break real fast. And on the back side of this break, we're gonna talk about some personnel within the Kentucky program and why these 9 wins are achievable. So stay tuned after this quick break. And we're back, folks. Obviously, now we're on the backside of this first break here. Vinny, I want to talk personnel, right? You mentioned earlier, before the break, guys like Lim Bowden, right? And taking that into context, right? You really saw, even to some degree, like a running back playing quarterback, which was crazy. And I didn't feel like that was sustainable. But now you have a competent quarterback that's a true quarterback in Will Levis, right? Regardless if he puts mayonnaise in coffee, which is absolutely disgusting, whether he eats bananas whole, neither here nor there. That's just some things that had me shook for a minute. With that being said, though, you see what he's able to do. Like we saw what he was able to do last season. Listen, I feel like, and we'll talk more about this in just a second, but I feel like he's a good quarterback for the system that Mark Stoops runs offensively. Predicated on running the ball, right? And we'll talk about Chris Rodriguez, I'm sure. But I feel like he can. I don't know if it's. I don't want to say game manager because I feel like he's more than that, right? But overall, what are your overall thoughts on Levis as now? I feel like now that you actually have a competent quarterback, like a true quarterback, not this like Wildcat quarterback. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm high on Will Levis. He had a solid first season last year. And you got to look at the fact that he transferred in from Penn State, where he was rarely used. He was a running quarterback, didn't throw much. Gets to Kentucky after the spring game, so he arrives late, wins the job, and kind of learns on the fly. You get your first full season as a starter in the SEC. I think through 13 interceptions, which you want to see him kind of cut that down a little bit. Some of them were dumb decisions, some of them were tips, that kind of thing. I still believe that things will slow down for him in year 2. You got a season under your belt. I think he'll see the game a little bit better. You'll refine some of the little footwork things that kind of bit him in the butt last year. Receiver is a little bit of a question. Last year, it was Wan'Dale Robinson. I mean, he caught over 100 passes, set the school record, single season record for UK history. Josh Ali was hurt, who was the better option as number 2. So you're going to have to spread it around probably out of necessity until you get a rapport with your guys. You get a Tavion Robinson coming in from Virginia Tech, Barryon Brown. Dane Key, a freshman from Lexington, they've been buzzing about him ever since he got there. So it's unproven as far as his targets go. The tight end room is solid. I mean, you guys know all about that, but Kentucky has a deep tight end room, which I think can take some pressure off of him until the receivers kind of hit their stride. So long story short, I'm kind of expecting, I mean, you're hearing first round hype. You're hearing a lot of hype for him. You're hearing, and if it breaks right, he can do that. He has the potential to be all those things. Now is, will you perform and produce to live up to some of these expectations that you have? We talked with Jalen Whitlow on Believe in Kentucky the other night, and that's kind of the way he sees it. He's got the potential, huge arm. I think he's more than a game manager, but it's just got to refine it. And if the game slows down and things break right, I think he has the potential to play his way into what some of these expectations for him are.
No, I'm with you on that. I also think you have to see another step in regards to his progression and development, right? You mentioned the turnovers, right? Obviously, as a quarterback in the NFL, those things, you don't want to see that much. And obviously, I think that's any level of football. But, taking that next step, right? I think there was a lot of positives that came out of Kentucky last season that you can grow from, right? Now, at the same time, listen, you bring Chris Rodriguez back, which is probably the most vital part of this offense, in my opinion. And maybe, and I might be wrong, but that's just in my opinion. But you also have some losses as well, right? Especially on the offensive line. You brought in Dare Rosenthal last season, if I'm not mistaken. But you also lost Darian Kennard, right? And I feel like that is going to be a position, with his departure, it's going to be interesting to see how Kentucky fills that void, right? Because he was an excellent player on the offensive line. He really was. From this standpoint, what are some options that you're seeing or you think that Kentucky will do to kind of fill that void left by Darian Kennard?
They have recruited well at that position. They got some guys kind of waiting in the wings. They redshirted some guys. You got Jeremy Flax, Kenyatta Goodwin, a big freshman from Louisville, to get
That's
some
a big name. Yeah, that was a huge name this past cycle.
And to keep him in state, another testament to the recruiting. And they recruited well in Ohio too. They kind of made Ohio part of Kentucky with their Ohio connections with Stoops and Vince Merrill being from up there. Get a lot of guys from Cincinnati and Columbus. Hey, come on down here and be an SEC. And you're still pretty close to home. And so they've kind of, made a pipeline out of that as well. Wallabaugh is another tight lineman that you should hear his name. David Wallabaugh is going to be able to probably get some playing time. Jeremy Flax. They got some guys there. The thing is, they're not proven. They seem to be confident that they can step in and produce. Of course, we're just going to have to see it actually happen. But there's not like a sense of panic that these guys haven't played a lot. So we'll just have to see how it does play out. So they've got some guys there. They got some depth there. And Scangarello is the new offensive coordinator, replacing Liam Cohen. Going to be tight end heavy. He came from the 49ers. We've seen what he's done with George Kittle and those guys. So the tight ends will probably be in there with some 12, 13 personnel, whatever, to maybe help out if the linemen are struggling, especially out there at tackle. Kenneth Horsey is versatile too. He can maybe throw him out there. He played a little left tackle in the bowl game. Didn't go that great for him against Iowa, but he's another option out there if they wanted to do that too.
Yeah, I think offensively though, Keontae Goodwin, I honestly think you could see him play as a freshman. Kid is bona fide. Like, kid looks bona fide.
Mm-hmm.
No question about it. Huge.
Yeah.
Right? And honestly though, that's a testament to the recruiting battle because that one was tough.
Mm-hmm.
And I was surprised because it was, if I'm not mistaken, it came down to Kentucky and Michigan State.
Yeah.
Which for a kid like that at that high of, because he was a high 4-star.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that Kentucky had kept him was surprising to me, but at the same time, it reassured me. I'm like, well, it must have been, something, maybe a pitch. Hey, look, Darian Kennard's gone. You could, you know what I mean? Like, this is your time now, right? Like, whatever the case may be, however you recruited him, you got him, you held on to him, and you use that as a stepping stone, right? That's the first of the many blocks or stones, you will, to get to that perennial level of recruiting that, being in the SEC, you have to have elite recruiting. You hear nationally, right? Oh, we had a top 25 class. Oh, we had a top 15 class. That don't mean anything in the SEC because, the fun fact was this: 12 of the 14 teams last season in the 22 cycle finished in the top 24 for that matter, man. With that being said, Kentucky finished 20th overall, right? They finished 20th overall. And you were 11th, I think, in the SEC, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. That to me, no, you were 8th. Sorry, you were 8th. My fault. You were 8th. So
almost top half, still in the bottom half of the league.
But see, this is the thing. People outside the SEC won't understand that. Like, if you finish with a top 20 class, generally speaking, that's very impressive. But that ain't even average in the SEC. Now, like, I'm not sitting here bashing on Kentucky, but I'm just trying to prove a point for anyone that's questioning the difference in recruiting from the SEC and every other conference. Yeah, look, top 20 class. Say if Kentucky hypothetically was in ACC and you were a top 20 class, you're upper tier ACC easily, easily, based off of numbers. But you're 8th in the SEC. It's just mind-boggling to me, right? So
it's not bashing. It's not bashing when you say it. We know the struggle. This is the wall we bang our head against every year, trying to work our way up into the league. So they are recruiting a little bit better. Some of it is development too. You go back to Josh Allen, who impressed you so much. He was a 2-star.
Yeah, it's development.
Monmouth is the only school. Kentucky and Monmouth were the only offers. So you got to develop what you get and then try to improve the level of talent. But
it's crazy, man.
Yeah.
But that's also a testament to Stoops and his evaluation, though.
Yeah, 2-star kid went 7th in the draft.
Yeah, now I'll tell you this though, right? Like, Kentucky has done an excellent job for what it's worth, scouting and eval, right? Like, when it comes to recruiting, obviously people put too much emphasis on these star rankings. And while it matters to some degree, it doesn't matter all the time. But listen, Georgia fans know this specifically. Some of our most impactful players last season on a national title winning team, for that matter, were 3-stars, man. Jordan Davis was a 3-star.
Wow.
A.D. Mitchell was a 3-star. Ladd McConkey was a 3-star. I'm not saying that it doesn't mean everything, because you had guys like Nakobe Dean and Quay Walker. Well, Nakobe Dean, 5-star. George Pickens, 5-star. Listen, 5 stars and 4 stars do matter. But evaluation is key too, because, like I said, like you said, from a Kentucky standpoint, Josh Allen was a 2-star. If you go back in time, I love looking at these graphics that post up on social media. You've got Russell Wilson as a 2 or 3-star, J.J. Watt as a 2-star. Listen, it's crazy to think that. But if you don't understand me, stars don't mean everything. They mean a lot, but they don't mean everything, because, as you know this, these ranking evaluators and things like that, can you tell me seriously that they go to every school and look at every player?
Right.
No, sorry. That's just not how that goes.
Mm-hmm.
So, listen, but neither here nor there. I want to take away this. The Keontae Goodwin commitment victory for Tennessee. I mean, not Tennessee, Kentucky. Wow. I had Tennessee on my brain. I was talking to somebody about this earlier, just talking about Tennessee and how I can't wait for them to come to Athens. So I think I just crossed into my head, but sorry about that. But no, when Kentucky, Keontae Goodwin, that could be the first stepping stone to land maybe a 5-star guy, right? And it could be a transcendent type player. I think Keontae Goodwin could be a transcendent player as well for Kentucky. It's just off the looks and what I saw in high school. I know it's obviously different, but he has the potential, if anything, to just be a game changer if you're not careful. It's just my thoughts on it, right? But let's kind of switch over to the defense, right? What's the pulse on the defense, right? Who are some guys? I don't necessarily know much about the defense, but I know it's a very physical one for that matter. Who are some key departures, and how does Kentucky look to replace those departures?
The front seven is pretty much where the bread is gonna be buttered, if you will. The questions will be more so in the secondary, where guys still aren't really proven. Carrington Valentine is back. He had some struggles, but he kind of got better towards the end of the year. You get Keidron Smith transferring in from Ole Miss to kind of help solidify that secondary. Jalen Geiger is there to help them out too. They lose Vito Tisdale. He got hurt a knee, so he's out for the season, which is a blow. More so, I mean, that dude blew up everything that moved as far as, just a hitter, a thumper in the secondary at safety. So they're going to miss him. The front seven, linebacker, you got DeAndre Square back. Jaquez Jones, who first year from Ole Miss, 86 tackles, a couple interceptions, and he felt that he didn't really lock in and do as good as he should. So he's planning to build on what he did last year with his first year in the system. Strong on the D-line. Justin Rogers, another higher level recruit from out of Michigan. I think he was 4-star. Kind of waiting on him to kind of break out. Octavius Oxendine was breaking out last year as a freshman. He got hurt in the Florida game. You get him back. Josiah Hayes is back. Deion Walker is a freshman that they've been raving about as well. So, Rogers maybe I mean, I'm sure he'd be in the rotation, but dude, you need to kind of watch out. You got some dudes coming for you already. And to me, he was the big name on the defensive side in his class. So maybe he kind of breaks out this year, anchoring that D-line. So Square is the heart and soul.
Fiersby was he's an edge guy, but he was like 6'5" or 6'6".
That's not, they love the long length. Jordan Wright, dudes like that, 6'5", 6'6", rangy, 220 type guys. That's what, Josh Allen 6'5", and I think he was 240 by the time he left, but he put on a lot of muscle. But the long length, long arms, that's kind of the guy Stoops likes to get in. I don't know if you're old enough to remember Bill Parcells with the Giants, but he always had those big linebackers, Pepper Johnson and Carl Banks. He loved big tight guys. So Stoops loves the long, tall, lanky guys that you can kind of put weight on their frame and add strength when they come in. So they're a little lean, but by the time they get in the program for a while, they get a little bit of weight. But yeah, Jordan Wright is another one. JJ Weaver, 6'5", 240, another kid from Louisville, kept him in state. So those are the kind of guys that they have on the edge and outside linebacker.
Yeah, I feel like that defense, right? Like historically, right? Like recency for Georgia perspective, right? Like Kentucky just plays you tough as shit. That's as simple as that. That's just the way it is. They just play you super tough and beat your ass. Like basically just physical game. You might win the game, right? Like our scores, right, have looked completely right, like lopsided, but at the same time, like it comes at a cost. It does. I remember oh my God, the monsoon game. I think it was in Kentucky that the game.
No, it was Athens.
Oh, that's right. It was. That's right.
21-0.
19 or 21-0, but it was ugly. That game was terrible. Like you couldn't pass the ball.
C-Rod dropped a touchdown. Had a touchdown in his hands that could have changed the game. I don't know if y'all were up 7-0 or 14-0 at the time. but right there, hit him in the hands and he dropped it. The game in Lexington, y'all won 14-3. We had no offense, but to hold that Georgia team to 14 points, we're like, man, it's Georgia's still winning. We still got a losing streak to Georgia, whatever it is, 12, 15 years. But you said the scores haven't been in the 90s. We used to lose to Florida 73-7 and 65-3 and all that.
A lot of people lost to Florida like that in the 90s, though.
The Georgia scores, they've been there kind of with Georgia, but y'all still get the win. 14-3, 21-0.
Them low score games if you really look at the game, it shows you like how this game is set up, right? Like, let's be honest, it's a lot of run game, it's hard physical defense. It's basically two teams that have similar identities, and you're just playing. You're just playing. So it's one of those things. Definitely interesting to see what Kentucky looks like this season, right? Like, obviously you got a lot of key departures, things like that, but I don't see an abundance of like issues. I would think you bring a lot of guys back too, so it's definitely not a Georgia situation, right, where you're having to replace most of your starters, if you will.
Yeah.
But I do think it'll be interesting to see.
Do Georgia fans? I'll ask you to get the pulse. Are Georgia fans saying that Kentucky is the hardest game on the schedule for them this year? Is that what they're saying, or is it Tennessee? Or because Auburn's down, you got to go to Mississippi State, but I'm not sure y'all aren't really sweating that. Who's the hardest game on your schedule?
I'll tell you this right now. And listen, if it's a good pop here. If you're in the brigade, answer this question. But in the meantime, I'll answer this as well. I wouldn't say Kentucky is necessarily the hardest game on the schedule for me. I think you're going to have to look at Mississippi State. And the reason why I say that is this. When you take into context going to Starkville in November with Mike Leach, a lot of people see that as just Mississippi State, but it's not. It's more than that. There's levels to it. But if you go back a couple years ago, now I understand our offense and our team has changed since then. However, Will Rogers as a true freshman lit us up. Lit us up in Athens, for that matter. And had it not, because this was the first game that JT Daniels had come, it was his debut basically. Now, at the same time, do they do the same game plan? I don't know. But the game plan then, right? The game plan for them at the time was sell to stop the run. There was no question about that. They made JT pass. We passed the ball. That was the way we won. Mississippi State's my trap game if I'm not careful. For me, that's mine.
And that's y'all play them before you play Kentucky, right? Starkville, then Lexington, I think.
I believe so. Yeah, I know we close out the SEC schedule with Kentucky, so yeah, it's just one of those things. I think it's the same thing. Y'all close out with us, and then you go to Louisville, which obviously we'll do the schedule breakdown in just a little bit here. No, you're fine. You're fine. But no, honestly, like you have this talk about Tennessee, right, with that explosive offense. I get it. Yeah. I get it. At the same time, like we handled it fairly well. They only dropped 17 points on us, which was impressive considering it was last season. But for me, I just you can't play man defense against the air raid that he runs, because if you remember, LSU never budged from the man defense and they got cooked.
Yeah,
they got cooked and lost. They got cooked, but they lost. Right? They lost too. Georgia got cooked for a lot of yards, but if you think about it, the way to play that air raid is you have to kind of play a soft zone so that you don't get beat deep, right? But you got to have sound tackling too. And there were some big plays that they made that game that we missed a tackle and the guy just took off for a touchdown, right? Could have impacted the game, but you know what I mean? Like we ultimately won that game. It was a lot closer than people wanted it to be. A lot of people were questioning what's going on with us. But in hindsight, right, because it's always 100%, you just you had to play that way, right? You just kind of have to. You expect a bunch of yards, but understand that, like, bend but don't break. That's the way to look at it from a defensive standpoint. And then you have to execute on offense, right? I think we get the win this season against them, but it's just something about it, man. It's just, I had me sweating a little bit. That's just my take on it.
Now I gotta ask too, since before we're all looking forward to this coming season, but the moment you were watching the game, I don't know if you were at the championship game or watching wherever, the moment it sunk in that they're about to do this. This is about to be the first championship in your lifetime for Georgia, because I know you're not born in 1980.
Correct. Yeah.
So the first title in your lifetime. You've had some close calls, had some games where you had Alabama on the ropes, thought you had them. You got them. You beat Bama for that chip. What was your emotions? What was the feeling? Just flash me back to what was going through your mind and what you were doing.
Well, first off, I think I was in a roller coaster of emotions. I was watching it from home, and I was sitting like an emotional roller coaster that night because, like, it was that first half of that game was a beautifully designed. It was a beautiful game. It was a slugfest. You knew what it was about, right? It felt like the Clemson game, the first half, right? It was just nobody gave up anything. Excellent defense, just figuring it out, right? And it was a lot different than the SEC title game, period. There was no question about that. It was a lot different, right? You sit there, and then obviously, when Stetson fumbled it or whatever, right? Stetson fumbles it, and we're like, oh, no, here we go, right? Here we go, like, this, now we're fucked. It felt like at the time, you're like, oh, here we go. This is what's going to cause it, right? Next thing you know, Stetson comes back, throws a touchdown to A.D. Mitchell. I'm like, let's go. Right? You're like, all right, you take the lead, but it's Alabama. You never see, until that shit strikes zero, it's never over. Yeah. Listen, they had just done the same thing coming, right? Or not the same thing, but like, listen, they made a comeback with under 2 minutes to beat Auburn. Right? Be that simple, right? Like, to win in overtime. You knew, right? Then you sit there, and then when Bowers caught that touchdown pass, I was so excited, but I saw the display for the flag pop up, and I was like, oh, God, no. And then they showed the replay, and I'm seeing Stet's helmets pop back, and I'm like, let's go. But then you do the math. I'm doing the math, and I was like, oh, it's 8 points. Oh, shit. So I'm sitting here being as quiet, like, my son was asleep, so I'm sitting here this right here, and then it comes down to it, and then they're trying to make the comeback, and then the pick six, right? Keeley jumps up, and you hear underthrown, intercepted. I just jumped. I was trying to contain myself. I could not do it. I was jumping. I was like, let's go, like this right here. Oh man.
Was you wanting him to go down? Was you wanting him to go down and go ahead and take it to the house?
I didn't give a shit because the reason why I say that is this, and I hope this makes sense.
Okay.
The drive that Bowers scored on, right? That drive, because I want to say it was under 8 minutes, and we took a lot of clock off.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that clicked in my head, and I was like, this is the best way for it to happen. When we took the lead, and then you saw, obviously we got the ball back, and then you saw the drive. That eerily reminded me of the closing drive against Clemson in the first game of the season. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you watched that game, but we sit there. We obviously had the 10-3 to lead, and we had the ball, but we had to run the clock out and sustain a drive to burn the clock out. And you saw the offense, and you saw the team just do what they just took over the game. Mm-hmm. Took over the game. We didn't score because we didn't ultimately need to, but you saw it happen, right? You saw just Clemson we just buckled them defensively, and their defense was legit last year. Mm-hmm. They were legit, especially that game, because they had everybody. It was insane. Mm-hmm. But when I saw us driving down the field obviously with the 1 point lead, I was like, wow, this feels like Clemson. You just sitting there like you just dominate at that point, right? I was like, this. And then when we scored and we got the 8, I was like, all right, cool. It's not over, but it's cool, right? I was excited as shit. Mm-hmm. But that pick six, boy, I was elated. I got cussed out because I about woke up my son. Like, I honestly, though, you could have called me anything under the book, and I wouldn't have gave two shits about it. I was just super excited. Simple as that. Mm-hmm. So obviously when that set in, I was like, all right, it's going to be super difficult for them to do anything, especially with our defense playing the way it was. Kind of had that feeling like, there you go. And you see Stetson Crown, you're like, man, this shit's awesome. And then obviously the Nolan Smith sack was just like, all right, it's over. Yeah. Yes. Yes, that's all it was at that point. Like, let's go. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
I'm telling you, man. Obviously, you want more of it, right? You do. But at the end of the day, right? Like, you know how difficult it is. Like, now we understand. Like, from a Georgia perspective, we know that it can be done, right? We can go off of we did this rather than what's going to be like when we do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's just, man, it was. Oh my god, I was elated, right? I was. Oh my god, that night
Mhm.
was. I couldn't sleep. I had. Oh,
So
didn't
just
care though. Did
had,
not care.
had to
I,
flashback with you, man.
I
Just see what he was feeling and just all the.
I went to work next day, drank so much coffee. It was unreal.
Yeah.
I lived off of coffee the next day, but you couldn't. You could have. I don't even know. You could have slapped me with a shitty diaper or something, and I probably wouldn't have cared. I'd have
Right.
been like, it's crazy as that analogy was. Dude, you couldn't have took me down at all. I
Right.
was so damn excited about that.
Couldn't tell you nothing. Mm-hmm.
Oh no! Oh no! So one quick question before we hop into our next break. Mike B asks, "What's the status on Chris Rodriguez? If I'm not mistaken, Chris Rodriguez is suspended for the first 3 games, 3 or 4."
4. They had the DUI, which was knuckleheady stuff, but there was another situation where um, people kind of know, had been told kind of what's going on, but nobody's really come out and said what it is, and it's kind of out of the coaching staff's hands, and so some university stuff they had to get involved. So that's why it's either 3 or 4, and they're kind of dragging their feet to say what it is. So 3 or 4 definitely gonna miss the Florida game, which is week 2 in the swamp, which sucks. They got probably some, they did kind of. I think they braced for it. You got Ramon Jefferson coming in from Sam Houston State, and they kind of bulked up the running back room. But looking like 3 or 4 games for C-Rod, which I just hate to see that because he was set up to probably break Benny Snell's rushing record to be the all-time leading rusher. Benny just broke the record that stood for 40 years, but Sonny Collins had it, and he left in '76. And Sonny's awesome. Got to meet him and chop it up with him. Benny just broke his record, and here three short years later, C-Rod is about to break it. And Benny's not even gonna have it that long, but given how many games he's gonna miss now, I don't know if he'll be able to get it, but he's definitely impactful. I mean, the dude never gets hit for a loss. He's always falling forward and just, he brings it every time. So I hate all this red tape and hassle and all this other side drama has happened going into this season, but get him back for week 4 or whenever they decide it is and add to a
Just go
strong
from
rate.
there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So what we'll do, obviously, with Chris coming back week 3, week 4 on this. So we're going to take a quick break, and after the break, we're going to break down the schedule, and we'll kind of get a feel for that. Right. So stay tuned, and we'll be back in just a second. We are back. Let's go ahead and jump straight into this. I want to jump straight into this because this schedule is interesting to me. You're looking at Kentucky schedule. First half, you're looking at Miami of Ohio, Florida, Youngstown State, Northern Illinois, Ole Miss, and South Carolina. We're breaking it up into halves here. That first half of the game, you're missing Miami, Ohio, Florida, and Youngstown State roughly. If he misses 4 games, I don't think you really have to worry too much outside of the Florida game, right? Outside of the Florida game, Chris Rodriguez comes back and y'all are just fine. Looking at this, I feel like you'll probably you probably take 2 losses maybe. I think Ole Miss is just going to be interesting to see. So out of these first 2, give me 4-2 going into the back 6 of your games. What do you think about your schedule in this regard?
What, as far as how the first half or all of it or
No, just the first 6.
first half? Okay. 1, 2, you got Florida. They just won down there a few years ago, and I just you got a first year coach. I think you should exploit that. Billy Napier may just get them rolling and do great things, but I don't think he's ready in the second game of his coaching career at Florida, coming off of a tough game against what they're going to have against Utah. South Carolina, you beaten them. I don't know how many times in a row. You were beating them before Kentucky got good. They were going 5-7 and beating South Carolina. So, I mean, they don't like that. They don't want to hear that down there in Columbia. But it is what it is. Stoops has been beating them for a while. I think it's 7 out of 8 now. And the only game they won was the game when all the quarterbacks were hurt. The next week, they went to Lynn Bowden and ripped off like 5 or 6 wins in a row. Backup quarterback gets hurt against South Carolina, and so they were just kind of, a boat without a rudder for that game. So Ole Miss is going to be tough, and a lot of people are giving Ole Miss the credit. They're saying Ole Miss are going to breeze through the first half of their schedule, which means beating Kentucky. Look, this is a homecoming game for Jacquez Jones and Keidron Smith, 2 guys that played at Ole Miss. This won't be the first time. I got them going 6-0, man, and they've done that before. Done that. Well, did it last year. Went 6-0. They've had 5-1 starts. Had hot starts before. I think they can pull the upset off in the Grove. I know Matt Corral is not there, but Lane will have the offense ready. But I'm not trying to be Homer guy too, but I think they can rip off the first 6.
I think you're right there. I see it going anywhere from 4-2 to 6-0. I think you have to be careful without Chris Rodriguez. That Florida game, especially in the slump, becomes very interesting.
Yeah.
Ole Miss, the Grove is just a weird place too, as well.
Mm-hmm. It could be a disaster, and they could be 3-3, but just trying to play it all out. I think they're able to go and handle business. 5-1 or 6-0, but I'm thinking they start off and get them all.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I feel like Kentucky is going to be just fine, even without Chris Rodriguez. Like I said, we saw the games, right? They're not super hard games outside of the Florida game, like I said, and that's the only reason why I think it becomes a little tricky there, because you're catching Billy Napier early.
That's why
That's why I feel like you have a good shot there, right?
Mm-hmm.
But as we pull this back up, right, you have the open right bye week to October 22nd. And then, you have Mississippi State, because we didn't cover that first. So you got Mississippi State, then you're bye. And then you have, trips to Tennessee and Como, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you finish the rest in Lexington, right? You got Vanderbilt, Georgia to wrap the SEC slate up, and then Louisville. I think this is where it gets tricky as well, because Mississippi State, right? Like I said, I told you how I felt about Mississippi State. Your defense has got to play a certain way, right? And that secondary could get very interesting, right, if you're not careful. Tennessee, another situation where it was surprising to see that they had the ball for like a quarter and still won that game last year. It was crazy.
Oh my God.
But I still think that Kentucky's defense, looking at Missouri, I think there's no question there. Vanderbilt, no question. In my opinion here, Georgia's just still too far of a gap between Georgia and the rest. Can it be competitive? Yes, but at the same time, I just don't know how. I don't see a way, unless Georgia just completely just deteriorates, that Kentucky legitimately would come in and now you're playing in Lexington, right? We're playing in Lexington, so you have the home field advantage there.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I just don't know if it's enough to really make me feel as if Georgia's going to lose that game. You have to be careful with it, but I just don't see that. And then Louisville, listen, I think you'll handle Louisville at home. I just do, right? I don't think it was even close last game.
The past 3 or 4 years, it hasn't been close. It was 52-21, or it's been blown out. It's been blowouts.
So
like 3 or 4 touchdowns every time we play them.
So this back half, these last 6 games, I've got another, I'd say 4-2. I think. Yeah, I think the loss to Tennessee would be. I'd like to see y'all beat Tennessee, because I don't care for Tennessee. I don't care for Orange, for that matter.
Nobody does. None of us do.
But the thing, I think the interesting thing is I think with year 2, like, they're going to have more defensive depth, and they're going to have more handle on the offense. It's going to make that scary, and I think that's what a lot of the media are thinking as well. We'll have to see what it looks like, though.
Our history against Tennessee, period, especially in Knoxville, is dreadful. They won there in 2020, the COVID year. That was Kentucky's first win in Knoxville since 1984. So it's brutal. So and you get them coming off a bye week. Typically, we've struggled. That's if there's a knock on Stoops is coming out of a bye week, come with momentum, and they've dropped games coming off of bye weeks for several years. The Mississippi State game, the weird thing about this series, that's our permanent rival from the West. And for the past 7, 8, 9 years, the home team has won every game. They haven't won in Lexington in forever. Kentucky hasn't won in Starkville since, I think, Randall Cobb. Randall Cobb was the quarterback, and they won like 14-13 in Starkville. And,
Wow.
so the home team wins every game. I'm not as worried about Mississippi State at home. As bad as I hate Tennessee, I grew up on the Kentucky-Tennessee border. I can't pick us to win in Knoxville. Yeah, even though they did 2 years ago, it's just something about that orange when they go to Knoxville. It doesn't go well. Georgia's still the cream of the crop. I'm glad we get Georgia late in the year. It's end of November. Hopefully it's a little cold. Hopefully it's some snow. Kentucky's doing good. We've painted the picture on other podcasts. You get SEC Nation up in there. You get Feinbaum coming in on Friday. It's like 22 degrees and snowing, and you get one of those things where you're coming into a hornet's nest and everything is in place for an upset. That's what we're hoping for here in Kentucky. And then we can knock off the dogs and then finish up, take care of Louisville like they always do. That's the hope.
No doubt. I think, as I pull the graphic back up for those watching, like I said, I think as I start to sit here and contemplate, right, I thought the 4-2 made sense in the first half, but as you really think about it, I'm really not sold on Jackson Dart, right? And, I think their key player there is Zach Evans on offense, right? But at the same time, if your offense is efficient, I think that's how you beat Ole Miss, right? South Carolina is going to be an interesting game, I think, for Kentucky, but I think that you'll still handle that, right? So I've kind of changed my overall to 9-3 with losses to Florida and Tennessee and Georgia. What would your takeaway from your overall final rankings here be for Kentucky?
Well, they're starting the season ranked for the first time in.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
Since they went to divisional format, this is the first time Kentucky's been ranked in the preseason, and they've been the East and West Division since '92. So you can start in the top 20. If you win 9 or 10 games, optimistically, if I drink the Chris Doran Kool-Aid and they do go 11-1 and only lose to Tennessee, that means you're in Atlanta.
Hypothetically, yeah, right.
Yeah, unless Tennessee went undefeated, and that'd be, which. So that would be, if you go 11-1, you're winning the East. And as bad as I hate Tennessee, I would take 11-1 and win the East with a loss to the hated Vols. I'd take that all day long. If you tell me right now Kentucky's winning the East and you're losing in Knoxville, sign me up. I'll take an L to the Vols for a trip to Atlanta winning the East. I'll make that trade every day.
Yeah.
But I think you're starting top 20. If you go 10-2, I think they could be, ranked 15, something like that at the end of the season. And you see them in the playoff rankings when the playoffs come out, which that happened the first time they went 10-3.
Yeah.
First playoff rankings came out, Kentucky's right there listed. And they put the logo in the weight room. Everybody laughed at them. Everybody's like, but yet when those rankings came out, Kentucky was in there for weeks and weeks and weeks. So be top 15 at the end of the season. And
yeah, I think so too. I mean, do you think so? Is that the case? You think 11-1, or do you think more of a 9-3, or what are your thoughts overall from a rank, like from a record standpoint? I should say. Wow, took me a little bit of time to process that.
I'm hoping 11-1. I want to believe 11-1, but I probably if I go, what are you supposed to go with, your head or your heart? My head will probably say 9-3, 10-2. My heart is like, Chris Doran, I hope you're right. So I'll 9-3, because you inevitably you're gonna play a dud game. You're gonna come out and be flat. You're just not gonna have it. Last year, speaking of Mississippi State again, they laid a huge egg at Mississippi State. Just couldn't get anything going. Couldn't stop them. Couldn't generate. It's just one of those games. You ain't got it. So you got to factor that in. So I'll say 10-2, even though my head says Chris Doering, I'm with you. But I'll say you lose to Tennessee and Georgia and go 10-2.
Still, I mean, it's still very respectable. I'm not going to, I mean, no, can't bullshit that.
That'd be the first 10 wins in the regular season, because they've been winning bowl games to get to 10 these past 2 years. That'd be the first 10 wins in the regular season since 1977.
Wow.
That's the year I was born. So I was, an infant in my mom's arms the last time they won 10 games in the regular season.
I mean, it could happen. I mean, I'm not saying it won't or will. For that matter, it could.
Chances of it now are a lot better than they've ever been.
Yeah, no, I just think it's going to be interesting to see. So obviously you've got to kind of in between, right? Your heart and your head, right? Who are going to be some players that Kentucky has to rely on or have step up to get to that ultimate goal right there in that record?
The receivers, Dane Key, true freshman out of Lexington, because you're losing a lot of production with Wan'Dale Robinson. Like I said, 100 catches. He's with the Giants now. He's in the NFL, and they're already loving what they're seeing out of him. Tavion Robinson from Virginia Tech is a veteran guy, first year in the system, but expect him to kind of come in and be a leader. And a true freshman, you're kind of leery about that. But the Dane Key is son of Dante, who played in the 80s, linebacker for Kentucky. So he's a legacy kid, grew up in Lexington, knows all the ins and outs of what it's like to play for UK and be a Kentucky kid. 6'3", big-time catch radius. Every time they tweet out any video from fall camp, it's him, mossing a DB or him making a catch. Still going to be an adjustment, no doubt, playing in games in college, but he's going to have to step up. You need production out of receivers because, like I said, you're missing 100 catches from Wan'Dale. The tight ends, too, I think, need to step up to take some pressure off of the receivers if it takes, Dane Key a minute or two to get going. Isaiah Cummings, Brendan Bates, Keaton Upshaw, young freshman Josh Caddis. The tight ends are the talk of camp, and they kind of need to step up too. Be a safety valve for Levis, help out blocking for those unproven tackles. So, receivers and tight ends, I think, need to step up a lot more as far as offense. And then we'll see, secondary on the backside, because the front seven is pretty solid. Just need to see what you're going to get from Carrington Valentine and Jalen Geiger and some of those guys who haven't been proven on the back end. So receivers, tight ends, and secondary.
Absolutely. Who would you, if you had to choose one player, offense, you can do offense and defense, or you can do just one total. Who would be Kentucky's MVP for the season? If you had to make obviously, listen, we know it's a prediction. If you had to choose right now, considering the circumstances today, right, August 26th, who would be Kentucky's MVP at the end of the season?
Probably Will Levis, because he's going to make it go. He's got a lot of hype. He's got to see how he handles it. Getting comparisons to Tim Couch. I'm going to say Levis offensively. A lot of people saying, as far as talent and potential to be drafted in the first round, Levis and, DeAndre's square, because he's been there forever, knows the defense like the back of his hand. Just a steady, solid veteran dude who can, get on people, calm dudes down, get everybody where they need to be. So I would say those two from offensive and defensive side.
That's fair enough. So Georgia fans, keep those names in mind. Obviously, we know Will Levis, but keep that name, keep those names in mind, because when we play in toward the end of the season, you might just very well see those same guys making plays and things like that. And hey, don't get caught off guard, because you heard it here. I'm just gonna let you know that. But with that being said, though, we've talked about the pulse of the program. We've talked about some names, personnel wise, things like that. Additions. Obviously departures, things like that. We've talked about the schedule, broke it down. Vinny, I just wanted to say thanks again for coming on the show, man, and giving us some insight into Kentucky. Obviously, with college football literally tomorrow, it starts tomorrow.
Yeah.
And obviously week 1 next week, right? So obviously, listen, it is super close. I know I'm foaming at the mouth sitting here waiting for football, and I'm sure you probably are as well. Listen, our friends over in Nashville have a game this week. Yeah, exactly. It might be the Bottom Feeder Bowl. I don't know what to tell you. It might be the Bourbon Bowl because people might drink so much that they pass out and forget the game. Who knows?
I love my bourbon. I'm from Kentucky now.
I was about to. I see. There's a reason why I threw out bourbon instead of whiskey or anything like that, right? We ain't talking about Tennessee whiskey. We talk about Kentucky bourbon.
That's right.
With that being said, hey man, like I said, thanks again for coming on. If people are interested in finding out, more about Kentucky and yourself, tell people where they can go to follow you and your work.
I host a couple podcasts at Cats Talk Wednesday. Been doing that for about 8 or 9 years. I host that with Terry Brown. So at Cats Talk WED on Twitter and Facebook. Do the Believe in Kentucky podcast and Believe Podcast Network, BLEAV in Kentucky. You can follow that on Twitter. And you can follow me at Vinny Hardy, Vinny with a Y, Hardy with a Y. You can hit any of those on Twitter.
There you go. So before we wrap this thing up, from a show perspective here, there are a couple announcements. First off, Georgia is on commit watch, folks. Just a couple hours from now, or later today, I should say. Anthony Evans, right, receiver, is making his college announcement. It seems to be between Georgia and Oklahoma. Obviously, we'll see what he does there. So you are on commit watch. And also, there is a show announcement for this upcoming season that you'll be seeing dropping here soon. And if you're listening to this, just make sure to go back to check Twitter and stuff like that. Got a big announcement for the upcoming season. I think you're going to like the change, folks, if you're listening, if you're watching. It's going to have a nice feel to it, right? Obviously, keep in mind, do understand that starting Monday, we are switching over to our new schedule. It will start video, right? We'll be live here Monday and Wednesday, same time, noon Eastern. Obviously, today is a little bit of a situation, but the plan is for noon Eastern time, Monday, Wednesday, with audio for the podcast listeners, Tuesday morning and Wednesday, same day, just a little bit later after the show. So right after the show, you'll get your podcast to listen to for the preview episodes on Wednesday, and obviously our reviews on Monday and Tuesday for audio listeners. So just wanted to make sure everybody's aware of that change. Vinny, have a great day. Hope you have a good weekend. We'll probably be doing the same thing, and that's watching football. Probably doing that. Whether it's not Kentucky, it's not Georgia. I don't think nobody cares at this point. We're just needing college football.
Exactly. And maybe Vanderbilt can do better against Hawaii this year than they did against ETSU last year. And
ETSU is a good team. Giving them credit, though. I ain't gonna say no to that.
They went to Nashville and got that check and got that dub. So
easy dub too, if I'm not mistaken.
Sure was. Man. I enjoyed it, man. Appreciate it.
Of course, man. With that being said, have a great Friday, and we will look forward to seeing y'all Monday. College football is here, folks. Don't forget it. Remind people, tune in, listen to the show, right? If you're listening on podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, if you're listening, like it, follow it, and leave a review. That stuff matters, right? And you ain't, just leave a review. Let me know how you feel about it. But if you're watching, hey, YouTube, Facebook, like, follow, subscribe, whatever the case may be, wherever you watch it. Let us know, and then get the word out, man. It's football time. It's finally here. Wake up from your hibernation, your natty coma, if you will. It's next Saturday. We going duck hunting, fam. Right? We blacking out the bins. That's what we're doing. We're blacking out the bins with the Spike Squad. They asked, we're going to deliver. So keep that in mind before we wrap this thing up. Obviously, Vinny, it's been a pleasure. Everybody have a great Friday. and go Dogs.